Hello, everybody. Hope you are having a lovely day, as they say. Hip hip hooray. So, for this Top Deck Thoughts, we're actually going to do a fun little gimmick with my top cards videos. Now, usually my favorite or my top 10 cards, it's usually the top 10 and the such, but since we are going into quite a epic quest of fun proportions with the upcoming Universe Beyond Final Fantasy set, and with the fact that there's a lot of Final Fantasy games, like a lot of Final Fantasy games. Now, specifically for this set, they made sure to only cover 16 games. I thought it would be a fun, aka 16 main entry games for the record. I thought it would be kind of like a fun little thing to do where we essentially go through the set and figure out what is the top card from each individual Final Fantasy game that is upcoming in the set. I thought that would be kind of like a fun little gimmick, and I thought you would enjoy the adventures. Plus, it gives my editor some fun time to actually edit with the new kind of like number entry videos, probably related to the Final Fantasy games. And I'm pretty sure my editor is a fan of the series, if my memory serves me correct.
Ben Starr, you're so funny.
Just because I'm a cube doesn't mean I can't have a stunning ass. Square piece of bread. Treat yourself to 19 inches of cube. And by cube, I mean my dick. That's very cubist of you.
I love this man. No, but seriously, I really do. I love him so much. Yeah. Anyways, back to the video.
Still, nevertheless, I think it's safe to say we're going to have some fun talking about what is, personally, the top 16 cards from the upcoming Universe Beyond Final Fantasy. But first, we do have to talk about the honorary mentions, and I think this one we're going to keep it nice, simple, to the point. The honorary mention this time around is the upcoming town cycle of lands that are also adventures. Now, technically, these are not like the most impressive cards of the set, but they're still pretty good cards. All a cycle of adventure spells that are a little bit overcosted for what you're doing, but in exchange, you are getting a land from them. I do feel like this is kind of like in the same realm of the MDFC lands, essentially, that we play, where more or less, yeah, you're paying more for something than you would usually pay for it, but honestly, these are just going to be solid for some deck designs, especially if those deck designs incorporate bounce lands, because as you know, play the bounce land, you bounce that town to your hand, and you can recast the adventure spell and then replay the land later. So, honorary mention, the Adventure Town cycle, really good cycle. But now, let us actually get on to the list and start our quest. Bada beep, bada boop.
Number 16.
So, what is my favorite card from Final Fantasy I? The classics. The one that started it all, and the one that people thought it was going to be the final game because the company were in pretty dire straits. But yet, as we know, that was not the case. And this one is kind of funny because the one card we're actually going to start off with is actually kind of fitting with the thematics, and that is, well, Starting Town. Seriously, you cannot avoid the gag, but also it helps that this is probably one of the better cards of the set. Now, yes, this is a card that essentially will enter in tab if it's not your first, second, or third land. Yes, I know the downside, but the card also has a lot of upside. Like, the factor is that it's essentially a budget City of Brass, aka Mana Confluence, is a very powerful card to have in Standard, if I'm being blunt. Mostly because we're trying to have mana fitsing, especially with all the free color or multicolor deck archetypes that have originated thanks to Tarkir Dragonstorm. And there's even just 2-color to even just essentially free color mid-range or aggro decks that will probably appreciate this land. Especially since after this set, when Edge of Eternities come out in the fall, a lot of the aggro-based, kind of like a dual-colored lands that we play early, are going to rotate out, as well as the Pain Land cycle that we got from Dominaria United and Brothers War. So yeah, if the card doesn't see play as soon as it comes out, it's going to see play in Standard immediately post-rotation. Just call it a good hunch. Plus, also, there is just the factor that even in Commander and other formats, it's also just, as I said before, it's a budget mana confluence. And slightly better than that, because the factor is, since you can tap it for colorless, there are just times where if you already have your mana fit scene and you don't really want to lose the life, well, you can just tap it for colorless. So that's pretty good. So yeah, starting off the list, we gotta go with Starting Town because, yeah, that is probably one of the better cards of the set, and it's going to be one you might want to get a playset of as soon as possible if you're playing Standard. Especially if you're doing multicolor shenanigans, honestly.
Number 15.
So, what do I think is the top card from Final Fantasy II in this set? This one was really tricky since the card selection was not, like, that wide with this, but if I had to go with one specific card, honestly, it has to be Minwu, the White Mage. This card is just ridiculously absurd. Sure, it's a 5-drop, but that ability for whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on all clerics, including Minwu himself, is just ridiculously absurd. Like, to put this in the most bluntest of terms, do you know how many Soul Sister aka Life Gain cards are clerics? Let me give you a hint. It's a lot. And you know how many kind of like life gain synergy, essentially engines, cards are in Soul Sisters that are also just clerics, that are just payoffs? Or even in the Angels deck that are clerics? Let me give you a hint. A lot. So yeah, pretty much making all those clerics that you would play in those decks into Ajani's Pridemates, essentially, is absolutely absurd. I mean, for Pete's sakes, even for the back deck in Bloomborough, that essentially is kind of like a life gain, life lost deck, do you know how many of those bats are clerics? A surprisingly decent amount! So, yeah, without a doubt, Minwu White Mage is the best Final Fantasy II card, just because making all your clerics into Ajani's Pridemate is absurd. And I do think the Life Gain Soul Sister decks in multiple formats will at least contemplate trying this card out without a sweat.
Number 14.
So, what is my top Final Fantasy free card of the set? Well, if I have to be legit honest with you, it is probably has to be the whole Crystal Cycle, essentially. This Crystal Cycle is actually a ridiculously fun and also really good cycle for Commander in general. Just provides a overall very powerful kind of like static effect of that color, whether it's doubling your life, as well as just essentially making increase of your mill, maybe even working as graveyard removal, etc., etc. But what's also really good about this cycle is it also discounts your spell of the specific color by 1 mana. I mean, we play 2 color mana rocks that essentially does this same thing to play them as mana rocks for the mana discount, and this just provides us the mana discount plus extra. And even just to top it all off, all these have a really solid activated ability that essentially allows us to synergize with the quote-unquote passive effect that the crystal has. Like, I think the best one for Standard, if I'm being legit honest, is probably the green crystal, mostly because the counter deck exists, and the factor that it just essentially doubles your counters, as well as just essentially has an activated ability to put more counters, that's really good. So, yeah. Honestly, I will put the whole Crystal Cycle as the best cards for Final Fantasy free from the set, mostly just because I think these are going to be Commander staples in the specific decks that want them for a long, long while, if I'm being quite frankly honest with you.
Number 13.
So, what is the best card from Final Fantasy IV, you say? This one is kind of hard because some people will go immediately to Cecil, since Cecil is a very strong card in the set. But I'm actually going to skip Cecil this time around and actually stick to one card that I think is ridiculously absurd. And that is, if I'm being legit honest with you, Rydia, Summoner of Mist. This card looks kind of innocent for a common until you think about it for a minute. First of all, let's take a look at that landfall trigger. Whenever you play a land, you rummage. That is actually a ridiculously absurd ability. That is, landfall that provides you card advantage is ridiculously a stronger effect than you think at first glance. And also it rummages you, which allows you to throw cards into the graveyard to help activate the secondary ability, which allows you to reanimate enchantments from the graveyard. And if they're saga creatures, aka the new summon cycle that we've seen in the set, they'll gain haste and then you can just attack with them. That's really, really good with this upcoming cycle. But also it's sneakily very good with the old Kamigawa Neon Dynasty cycle of flip enchantments. And the main reason why is because originally the balancing factor for Iridia is the factor that the enchantments will come in with a finality counter if you reanimate them. Well, due to the way how the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty enchantment works, aka probably the most famous of this is Fable the Mirror Breaker, is that you go through the saga, and then due to the factor that they flip themselves, well, then they actually remove the finality counter from them, since for the finality counter to exile, the creature has to die. So you essentially are more or less reanimating the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty enchantments for pretty much no cost, essentially, other than the activated ability cost. So yeah, Iridia is a very strong card. I have seen a lot of people speculating on how they want to brew around her, especially probably throwing her in the already speculated Terra deck, essentially, for the summon creatures and such. This one's going to be fun because I'm also even tempted to throw this in Loot Soup, because that landfall ability to help me rummage to throw loot into the graveyard to throw into the cauldron is actually a ridiculously strong ability. So yeah, my favorite Final Fantasy IV card, it has to be Iridia. Iridia is just a really, really good uncommon, if I'm being honest with you all. Like, legit, very honest with y'all.
Number 12.
So, what is my favorite Final Fantasy V card from the set? This one was kind of tricky, but honestly, I had to go with Gilgamesh, Master of Arms. This is just a ridiculously fun card that's just a aka kind of like a variant of the Titan cycle we've seen from previous Magic sets, or the Overlord cycle in the recent Dustborn set. Just having a card that essentially has the ETB and attack trigger to just fish out equipment from your deck and then just get a free equip. Ridiculously absurd. This is actually going to be really funny and limited as well, since we have a bunch of job select equipment. So essentially this could more or less, especially maybe even standard with the 4 Mirrodin cycle of equipments that come with a creature and such, as well as the job select, just being able to more or less maybe generate a board presence from essentially fishing out those equipment. Very fun. This one is more, I think, going to be a jank brew, but I could also see just like equipment-centric commander brews just giving it a shot, because more or less it's just going to be just card draw, aka not even card draw, just card advantage by essentially both drawing the cards as well as playing the equipment on the battlefield for the low price of making sure you either cast Gilgamesh or let it attack, which is absurd. So yeah, I think equipment-centric deck designs are going to enjoy Gilgamesh quite a bit, if I'm being honest with you. Though, I guess just make sure that Geralt is not battling with him on the bridge, I guess. Da-da-da-da-da, there's a reference.
Number 11.
So, what is my favorite, or not even favorite, what is the top Final Fantasy VI card of the set? And y'all, this was really hard. Like, there's a lot of good Final Fantasy VI cards. There's the new Terra, there's even the new Kefka. But if I have to be legit honest, what's the most powerful Final Fantasy VI card of the set? It has to be Go-Go. Like, Go-Go, the Mimic, pretty much the, I'm having a brain fart here, the Mastery of Mimicry, that's the name of the card. This card is actually ridiculously kind of absurd with that really absurd activated ability. Being able to copy triggered as well as activated abilities as a mana sink is really powerful. Note that this also can help copy stuff like Planeswalker abilities, landfall triggers, any ETB or death trigger, like the list can go on. There's a lot of powerful triggers in Magic, and being able to copy them with Go-Go is just ridiculously absurd. Like, and the fact that I can just throw them into Aghanim Sol Cauldron to make all my creatures have that ability makes me very tempted to try a funny brew with him, if I'm being legit honest with you. Plus, there's even just a lot of really silly ways you can go infinite with it, like with Unstoppable Plan from Aether Drift. there is a sequence where, since Unstoppable Plan is a triggered ability at the end step, you could, if you have enough Mana Dorks and Go-Go on the battlefield, you could technically tap, while the Unstoppable Plan trigger is on the stack, you can tap Go-Go, as well as tap the quote-unquote Mana Dorks and such to then copy the Unstoppable trigger ability, and then maybe have, like, say, maybe a Peener as well that taps and Peen, and then essentially have multiple Unstoppable Plan triggers, or even go infinite with it potentially, and then just have infinite Peens, or like maybe an infinite of a really powerful activated ability that you can tap and such. Like, there's a lot of silly lines you can do with Go-Go, so yeah, the most powerful Final Fantasy VI card of the set, honestly, for just the amount of potential shenanigans it can do, and I do like my shenanigans, it has to be Go-Go without a sweat.
Number 10.
So, what is the best Final Fantasy VII card of the set? Well, there's a lot of tempting options since we did have a lot of good Final Fantasy VII cards, but there's a really tempting options of all the variety of potential shenanigans. Oh, what am I kidding? Just play the One Winged Angel, or how much of we can play of that song without getting copyright strike.
Good to see you, Cloud.
Come on, it has to be Sephiroth. Sephiroth is just probably one of the better cards in the set that's not another card that we'll be talking about soon. But yeah, Sephiroth is just absurd. It is one of the best Blood Artist variants we have in a while. Just the fact that it's a Blood Artist that's not one-sided like we've been getting with Blood Artist variants lately. The fact that it also does the trigger on your opponent's creature's death as well as yours is ridiculously absurd. Also, the fact that it just has an ETB and attack trigger to just sacrifice something to draw a card is, And then just to top it all off, just to be like, oh, by the way, if you trigger this 4 times, oh, we're just going to flip it into One Winged Angel, which then has an emblem that is essentially a Blood Artist trigger. Oh, and then, by the way, its attack trigger is now going to be if you can sacrifice multiple fiends and draw multiple cards. And, I mean, that is ridiculously absurd. But, hey, on the bright side, 4 creatures have to die. It's not like there's, like, a mechanic from Dragonstorm that makes a bunch of warrior tokens that will die on the instead. Oh, wait, mobilize the thing. Yeah, I think Sephiroth is going to be a very, dare we say, popular card in Standard? Let's just say it's going to be popular. The only thing that's probably going to keep in check is probably removal, because I think a lot of people are going to try to kill this card on sight, and you can't blame them. So yeah, the best Final Fantasy VII card without a sweat is our pretty boy with the long sword. It has to be Sephiroth. I mean, for Pete's sakes, y'all. This is probably one of the best cards of the set. Without a doubt.
Number 9.
So, what is the best Final Fantasy VIII card of the set? This one, I kind of wanted to joke and throw Triple Triad on there because I do love the potential advantage shenanigans, but if we're being honest here, it's probably got to be our main man Squall, if we're being honest, mostly just because that's a very powerful card. Just the fact that it can give an attacking creature double strike is a very strong ability, especially if you apply that to a very strong creature with a good Saboteur trigger, which, oh, by the way, Squall has by itself, just being able to just more or less do a Sun Titan trigger on combat damage to a player, and it can give itself double strike, which means you can essentially get that Sun Titan trigger twice. That can return fetch lands, that can return really powerful early game creatures that die to removal and such. Or heck, you can even, if your Sephiroth dies by an opponent's removal spell, you can return your Sephiroth. Okay, I know we're leaking a little bit of Final Fantasy VII in here, but come on, Sephiroth is a ridiculously absurd card. But you kind of get my point here. So yeah, Squall, probably the best Final Fantasy VIII card just because the potential shenanigans. Yes, I know about his rival, and his rival is also a very good card as well, being able to do a Staffcaster Mage-like trigger as well. But I do like returning my powerful early game permanents more than recasting spells. Sorry, Staffcaster Mage fans of the world, I know. But still, I like Squall a lot, if I'm being legit honest with you. Squall, very good card. I just wish the Gunblade was a little bit better other than being limited chaff. But, yeah, hey. you can't win everything, as the old phrase goes. Bada beep, bada boop.
Number 8.
So, what is the best Final Fantasy IX card of the set? It's Vivi. Okay, let's just be 100% honest. I know we're doing the little gag where, like we did with Sephiroth, but if this is the other best mythic of the set, it's without a doubt the gag has to be repeated again. Like, Vivi is one of the most absurd cards that we've seen in Magic in a long while. Now, yes, there is the fact that it dies to almost every removal spell being a 0/1. Don't get me wrong, but all those abilities you get on Vivi is ridiculously absurd. The 0 mana ability to essentially be able to generate its red or blue mana depending on its power. Yes, it's a 0 power, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Is a very strong ability, which by itself wouldn't be too bad if it didn't have a way to buff itself. Oh, by the way, it gets a counter every time you cast a non-creature spell. Not to mention, there's also the factor that technically if you decide to make sure not to activate this before you do a combat trick, like say, I don't know, Monstrous Rage, Gigantic Growth, all the other spells that help buff the creature's power, heck, even equipment in general. Oh, by the way, those spells can now become rituals. Oh, and there's also a bunch of infinite combos that people already found out in Commander where you can use stuff like Quicksilver Elemental of all cards to actually get infinite mana with Vivi. Or you can do the Displace the Kid in Shenanigans where you flicker Vivi to essentially then make sure a new copy of Vivi, so then you can essentially then, if you find a way to get him increased power again to activate the ability again. You kind of get my point here. Like, Vivi is a ridiculously absurd Magic card. Like, I've seen a lot of Commander players are scared of this card. And of course, all the CDH players are really, really excited to play this card. And when the CEDH players are hyping a card up, you know it's going to do some absurd shenanigans. Like, I'm still a little cautious about this being impactful in Standard due to the aspect of, well, it's a 0/1 and everybody's playing early game removal to deal with the Izzet Prowess. But on the other side of the coin, Vivi can be played in Izzet Prowess. So, yeah, Vivi is a ridiculously absurd Magic card. It's safe to say that I think Vivi is going to do a lot of busted shenanigans in Standard and Commander and a variety of formats it's going to see play in. Like, don't be surprised about if you don't be surprised if you see Vivi everywhere, because Vivi is just a very, very strong card.
Number 7.
So, for those who don't know, one of my personal favorite games from the Final Fantasy entry is, of course, Final Fantasy X. And let me allow this moment to just nerd out a little bit, because I love this game. I love the Spirit Grid system. I love the really emotional story. I cry every time at the ending scene. I mean, for Pete's sake, the fact that they used the precon to make a fairware copy of the ending scene, just... But also just... Really, that precon is a really fun precon. I can't wait to play that. But we're talking about the main set here. So what is the best Final Fantasy X card from the set? And this one was kind of hard because there was actually some really good options. But we have to go with one of the big summon creatures of the set that is coming thanks to Final Fantasy X. And that has to be Summon Bahamut. Now, this card is just ridiculously absurd. Yes, it's 9 mana, but let's just get through a few things. First of all, it's a dragon. Let's see, didn't, Tarkir Dragonstorm just came out a while back and then helps us find a way to discount dragons, you know, make them for the low cost of 3. Oh, hey there, Dracogenesis, haven't seen you in a minute. So there's stuff like that, but there was also just some ridiculously absurd shenanigans with it, with the factor that just all its saga triggers are good. Being able to get 2 exile removals is... Not even exile removals, sorry, I'm thinking Ugin here. But we're going to talk about Ugin in a minute. But getting 2 destroy a target non-land permanent triggers is just ridiculously absurd. Then also just getting to draw 2 cards, really good card draw advantage. And then the super last step where you can essentially deal damage each to opponent depending on the mana value of all your other permanents. Especially if you're playing this in a Dracogenesis deck and you're probably going to have multiple dragons on the battlefield. Yeah. And you don't even have to play this in the dragon deck. You can also, since it's a large, big, colorless permanent, there's another kind of like deck design that will like this card a lot, and it's the card that is with the other dragon that we liked that was a colorless dragon in the previous set. Hey, Ugin, Eye of the Storm. Sure, let's make my Bahamut also have an exile target non-land permanent trigger, because why not with Ugin on the battlefield? Because, yeah. Bahamut is just a silly card. I am going to have a lot of fun playing Bahamut, but don't be surprised if you don't. Don't be surprised if Bahamut also sees play in like the Dragon decks you see in Commander, because, I mean, come on. Dracogenesis, just, yeah. And of course, with all the Saga creatures, if you find a way to proliferate to get to the in-step trigger sooner, which is also possible, so yeah, Bahamut is the best Final Fantasy X card of the set, in my personal opinion. Though my heart does also go out for the Yuna card, which also is a very synergistic way to cheat out Bahamut. Wink wink, nod nod.
Number 6.
Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit weird since we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XI, and I'll be honest, I have not played this entry. I am not the biggest player of MMO RPGs and such, so yeah, we're going to get a little bit awkward when we talk about 14 as well, but so I had to try to figure out what is the best Final Fantasy XI card, and I think I'm going to use this as a way to actually talk about what I think is one of the more fun, uncommon cycle cards of the set, and that is the whole Cid cycle. So for those who don't know, in Final Fantasy, Cid is a very popular side character that went from all the way from 2 to all the way currently 16. And what they did in this set is they essentially made Cid essentially the Persistent Petitioner card of the set, where you can have multiple copies of it. And they literally made about 15 copies of the Cid, each of them with the art from the Cid of the respective game it was in, which is absolutely hilarious. But of course, for this one, we got to focus on the Final Fantasy XI Cid here. But yeah, Cid in itself is a pretty powerful card. Just being able to cycle it early, which is pretty good to get the card draw to fill into the graveyard. And then it has when it's on the battlefield, it has a really powerful trigger to make your artifact creatures as well as your heroes get a buff for each artificer card that's on the battlefield or in the graveyard. Oh hey, you're throwing all those Cids in the graveyard, they now become buffs if you have a Cid on the battlefield. Neat! Also, I do love the fact of how this works with artifact creatures, so this actually works secretly pretty well with vehicles, which, come on! Cid working with vehicles like airships and such, that's a given. So the fact that your airship can now be ridiculously buffed depending on how many Cids you have on the battlefield or the graveyard, ridiculously awesome. Also, this is secretly kind of a good card for potentially the upcoming Marvel Universe Beyond standard sets, because, well, as we already seen with the Secret Lairs as well as the Commander thing with Spider-Man and such, all these are heroes. And guess what? Cid buffs heroes. Neat! So yeah, we'll use 11 to talk about Cid. And okay, I know some 11 fans are going to be saying, why is Absolute Virtual not on the list? Guys, gals, and everybody in between, let me be honest with you. Yes, the fact that it can't be uncountable, cool. The fact that it gives you hexproof, cool. But the fact that it can die to almost any removal spell and board wipe due to the fact that it doesn't give itself hexproof, yeah, you kind of get my point here. So, yeah. Still, the best card from Final Fantasy XI, we're going to cheat here and just say the Cids, because I feel like the Cids are going to be a fun brew around, if I'm being legit honest with you. Bada beep, bada boop.
Number 5.
So, what is my favorite Final Fantasy XII card of the set? This one is kind of tricky, because I think everybody's going to go for the Barthier as well as just essentially the Pirate. But I think we gotta go with the Human Scout here, and we gotta go with the protagonist, which is Vaughn, Street Thief. Yes, it is very intentional that he's not a pirate. It is kind of a flavor when he's not a pirate. If you don't know why, well, play Final Fantasy XII.
I'm Captain Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dalmasca.
But anyway, this is actually a ridiculously powerful card, making all of your pirate scouts and rogues into essentially a semi-Ragavan is a very powerful ability, either for ramping or for getting the card draw advantage if you can cast a spell on the right time. And oh, by the way, if you decide to cast the spell that you steal from the opponent, you also just buff all your scouts, pirates, and rogues. That's ridiculously absurd. The only thing that's going to keep this in check is the fact that it's a 2-2, so it dies to a lot of fiends, but I do think pirate decks are going to be tempted to try this card out, even if it's not a pirate himself. Mostly because of the simple fact that for pirates in Standard, there's a lot of evasive pirates. Like, one of the more favorite, like, one-drop pirates is literally a flyer. So, yeah, I think Van is going to have some chance in Standard without much sweat. Or heck, even in Alchemy, since due to the heist mechanic in Alchemy, you see people constantly getting their cards stolen, and the fact of that, whenever you cast a heist card, you can essentially get the buff ability from Vaughn. Really good. So yeah, the best Final Fantasy XII card without a sweat has to be Vaughn, if I'm being legit honest with you. Or if you want to be honest, you can do the whole he's the captain of the blah 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 blah. You can fill the quest here, editor, just roll the clip.
I'm the Bosch von Ronsenberg.
Number 4.
So, what is the best card from Final Fantasy XIII? And this one is kind of obvious as well. We gotta go with Lightning Army of One. This is nasty, y'all. So, for those who don't know, Lightning Army of One, 3-2 with first strike, and then it also has the very powerful ability that for stagger, where if you deal combat damage with lightning, until your next turn, the opponent that gets dealt damage by lightning's damage gets doubled by anything. So let's say, for example, you're attacking with an army of creatures. Lightning does the first strike. Oh, all your creatures are now going to deal double damage. Or most importantly, since you're playing this in Boros, now your Boros Charm is going to deal double damage. Or most importantly, if you decide to play this in a Goad deck, now that when you attack with lightning and deal damage, all your opponent's creatures that you probably goaded are going to deal double damage. Yeah, this is like a pretty easy recommendation. Lightning Army of One is going to do some funny shenanigans of the dealing double damage variety. And that's not even getting to the fact that if you find a way to do multiple combat stats with lightning and being able to double the damage triggers, so yeah, the best Final Fantasy XIII card of the set, it's gotta be Lightning. Let's be honest.
Number 3.
So, as I stated before, since I have not played much of the MMORPGs, I have not much experience with Final Fantasy XIV. However, they got a lot of cards in the set, including some really fun precons. So, what is the best Final Fantasy XIV card of the set? I'm going to actually go a little bit off the hook on this one, because a lot of people are going to try to point to either both the main set or the commander deck, Y'shtola. Both of them are very powerful cards. However, I'm going to go a little bit different here and go with one of the job select equipments we got from the set, which is the Summoner's Grimoire. I believe if I'm getting the name of that right. Let me check. Yes, Summoner's Grimoire. This, I think, is secretly a very powerful card. Now, let me elaborate here. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is essentially a Elvish Piper variant. Now, yes, we did have Elvish Piper variants in the past Standard, and they turn out not to be the best cards, so why am I being a lot more optimistic about this variation? And that is because the factor is it's an equipment, so it makes any creature into an Elvish Piper variant. That's including any hexproof creatures, or any creatures with evasion, or indestructible. And being able to make those, aka a Elvish Piper variant, is actually pretty strong when you think about it. Yes, the equip cost is a lot, but let's be honest here. We literally have a card in the set that is a 1-mana instant. Oh, we're going to instantly equip a creature with an equipment at instant speed. You kind of see where I'm getting with this? So yeah, Summoner's Grimoire, I think it's just really good because the factor is it's an Elvish Piper variant that, well, essentially will make all your future creature spells, including the creatures you cheat out with it, into an Elvish Piper, which I think is pretty strong effect that should not be disregarded. Let me put it like that. So yeah, the best Final Fantasy XIV card? I think I'm going to get some flack for this one, but I really think we should not be sleeping on the Summoner's Grimoire. I think the Summoner's Grimoire is a very good card.
Number 2.
So, what is the best card from Final Fantasy 15? And since we haven't really seen any villains yet on this top list, well, okay, I'm kind of lying there. We did solve Sephiroth, so let's say more villains in this list. Since Final Fantasy has been known for their famous villains, let's go with one that I think is going to be one of the more absurd standard cards that's not named Sephiroth, which is Aiden the Usurper. The Usurper. Wow, that was a little bit of word jumble there, but yeah, this card is just ridiculously absurd. So let's elaborate here why. Because this card, yes, it's ridiculously expensive, but let's be frank, we're in a Reanimator meta, we can literally zombify this card without sweat. And the fact is it provides a very powerful combat trigger, which is pretty much a scavenging ooze-like effect that then if you steal an opponent's creature from the graveyard, it becomes a token copy of a demon. That also, thanks to it being a demon now, gets the Lord effects that Aiden provides, which is ridiculously absurd. Especially in Standard, where Mono Black Demons is a deck archetype. Especially with the Unholy Anetses of the world. Yeah, you're kind of seeing where I'm saying here? Yeah, Aiden, I think, is a ridiculously strong card. Just because Mono Black Demons is a thing in Standard, and there is just a lot of powerful creatures in Standard that are going to be in Standard with the upcoming Final Fantasy set. Like, here's a hint. You know how a lot of people are probably going to be trying out those Summoner creatures, and those Summon Saga creatures are going to die inevitably and be in the graveyard? Wink, wink, hint, hint, nod, nod. You can now reanimate those with Aiden, and they become Demon Saga creatures with all the abilities that Aiden provides. Yeah, I really like Aiden a lot. Like, I'm definitely going to try an Aiden brew, honestly, during the streamer event, because I do think this card is sneakily one of the stronger cards of the set, just for specific archetypes that are going to enjoy them quite a bit, if I'm being quite frankly honest with you. So, enjoy that fedora, or is it a trilby? I don't know. Is it a trilby or a fedora? But still, enjoy this fedora trilby wearing individual, because it is going to do some shenanigans. I mean, for Pete's sakes, we haven't even talked about what happened if he decided to reanimate an Atali from the graveyard. This card is absurd.
Number 1.
So, what do I think is the best card from Final Fantasy 16? Now, this one is definitely an interesting entry in the genre. I played a little bit of it thanks to the demo, and honestly, there's a part of me that kind of likes to summarize it as just like Game of Thrones with kaiju fights in it. But honestly, it's also a pretty fun game, if I'm being honest. And also, Torgo's the best doggo, but not the best card. So what is the best card from 16? Well, the temptation is to go with any of the Flip sagas, like specifically the main protagonist as well in the set. Honestly, I think we gotta go with the villain for this one as being the best 16th card of the set, and that is Ultima, Origin of Oblivion. This one is just ridiculously absurd. Just the factor that whenever you tap a colorless land, essentially for colorless mana, you double your colorless mana. That's really absurd in the current standard, especially with how many Pain lands we have. Now, it's going to be a little bit short-lived since the Pain lands will rotate out of standard in the fall, but that is still going to be a short-lived one. But also, there is the fact that we have Starting Town as well as some other colorless lands still going to be in standard, so I think you're still going to get the mana double ability pretty easily here. And it's not like there's any good colorless permanents we want to cheat out with the ramp. Oh wait, there's the Bahamut. Oh wait, there's the Ugin. Oh, wait, we can now just tap one of our lands for the double and then just essentially play a Maze Mind Tome for just tapping one land. Yeah, that's actually really good. And we're not even getting to the attack trigger yet, which the fact that it can target a land and essentially make it a waste, more or less, that's actually really good to have kind of like a land hates ability on Ultima, especially if you are really cautious of a opponent's very powerful land, like in Commander. We all know the ones, like the Agadine's Crypt. We also talk about the oh wow, I'm having a brain fart. edited just for all the good, really commander lands that are really powerful, like Gaia's Cradle, stuff like that, essentially. Or just like, the one that taps and you get a lot of black mana. I am legitimately brain farting out on this, but you know what I mean? Just the fact that the land hate, also in Standard, is actually really good to help hate out the man lands, as well as some of the more powerful utility lands, such as like Fountain Port, stuff like that, essentially. So yeah, I think Ultima is secretly a very good Standard card, especially for at least a short period of time where pain lands are still legal. So I think the best card from Final Fantasy 16 from the set, I think personally it's Ultima, though yes, I do think also a close second is either Joshua, or if you want to, the main protagonist of the set, Clive, essentially, so yeah. But the best Final Fantasy 16 card, in my personal opinion, has to be Ultima. And that is my personal opinion of what are the best cards from the upcoming Universe Beyond Final Fantasy set. Now, personally, I think this set is going to be amazing. This looks like going to be a very fun set. You can tell a lot of heart and care was put into this set, especially with all the references and such. All the cheeky little nods. I mean, for Pete's sakes, we had a nod to the noodle gag in Final Fantasy 15.
That's it! I've come up with a new recipe.
Something dawned on me when I was on my own. Any food you make tastes better when you use good ingredients, right? Then, if you take something already delicious like cup noodles and add in the finest, freshest ingredients, what do you get? The ultimate flavor experience. So I ask you, Noct, what's your favorite ingredient?
Which made me smile. The bonus sheet also looks pretty cool with all the cool art from the previous games. Like, this set is going to be really fun. I can't wait to play it, and I hope you enjoyed my 2 cents of what I think are the best cards from the set. Nevertheless, if you have any personal favorites or what you think are going to be personal best cards of the set, you can leave them down in the comments below. I hope you all have a good day. As they say, hip hip hooray! Now cue the victory fanfare music. Am I doing this right? Where we just do the little... I think it is kind of kaiju fights with Games of Thrones mixed into it. But still, I think if I recall correct, I think this is my editor's favorite Final Fantasy game, if my memory serves me correct. Editor, you can comment here on that.
This is